Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very different conversation with Moira Bramley and
Hello.
myself. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about definition and undefining you. And one funny thing that Moira said was, defining you is like trying to bite your own teeth.
I
And
actually read that in an ADHD book. That was by a doctor who has ADHD, and reading his book gave me a lot of awareness. Yeah, so that was a quote. I was like, yeah, that.
I just go for the visual of it, and I'm like looking at, like how would that be possible when I see like, heads turning inside out and everything. But yeah. So, and we were also just talking before this, and I said a good friend of mine, Yuko, I was talking to her about how, XMen have basically a like very much undefined in their sort of nature, and then we have a lot of labels that have been created in order to categorize and define like some of these XMen, usually it's disabilities like ADD, ADHD, OCD, or autism. But one of the things that she got for the first time was that, oh, I'm actually not what I thought I was. I'm undefined in that I have way more choice available to me than
Yeah,
what I've sort of labeled and defined myself as.
so undefinable that it's not even a concept. It's like hard to get because there is nothing to hang on to get the awareness of it. It's literally space, and
Right.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like trying to trap air in a box or something. It like
yeah.
just
There's no context to put it in.
yeah. But it is funny because it is also this place where I think XMen as well, being so aware of what people like project and expect, it's so easy for them to start to categorize themselves based on other people's points of view and sort of like
Yeah,
projections of who they are and how they fit.
yeah,
Um, but for most of you guys, if you look at it, it's like you've just never really fit. You've
yeah.
been able to, you know, be with different groups and kind of like morph and change yourself to a degree that you could slightly fit, but you've never actually really fit.
And that's a capacity that has to be developed. It's a capacity of magnitude, isn't it? To be able to be with people and be a contribution, um, stay with the space, the energy space and consciousness that you be. And yeah, that's a massive capacity to
Yeah.
stay being the energy space and consciousness that you be and in total awareness and be what will be a contribution to other people as well. Know what they can receive.
Yeah.
Wow, it is major.
Yeah. One of the things, actually, I was talking with Shannon recently, and she said to me, I'm just as aware as you are, but I look people in the eyes because I often avoid eye contact.
Yeah,
And I went, wow, that's so true. And it's such a different energy to be present with all of that, everything that you're aware of,
yeah,
and still be present with other people and their worlds energetically, and not
yeah,
make any of it like greater than you.
yeah. And one of the things that Gary said to me when I was doing a class in Rome a while back, I was after class. I went for a walk around the city, and everything was way intense, more intense than it had normally been. And I literally ran back to my hotel room. And I was like, oh my God, I have to get into my hotel room. And I shut the door. And it was like, I really need, Temple Grandin has a squeeze box. This is about Temple Grandin. If you haven't seen it, it's a movie about a woman who is autistic, and she discovers that when her body's squeezed tight, that she relaxes. And I don't know how it works. Do you know?
Well, it's actually what it was designed from is a cattle crush, which is what they do to hold cattle still so that they can, like inoculate them or, do whatever they need to do. And so she she lives like grows up on a farm and so uses this, and then when she goes on to study at university and everything, she actually like builds her own version of a cattle crush, but made out of timber and slightly nicer materials for her body.
Yeah.
And she uses that to relax when she gets, I guess, overstimulated or, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
overloaded. Yeah.
So I ran back. I ran back to my room, and Gary was laughing. He says, "What makes you think that if you get in a box, you're less aware? Who told you walls were solid and real?" But what I got to, the awareness that I got to was, if I shut myself in in a box, I can. It's like burying your head in the sand. I don't have to be me. And what he got me to see was that the more powerful and potent that we become, everything that we perceive and receive seems like it's way more intense. And I thought that intensity was coming from people and things, you know, the noise of cars, and I thought it was coming from outside of me. But what it is you become so intense that anything you perceive is amplified like 100-fold, 1,000-fold, the more potent. And so when you become more aware, more powerful, more potent, you then have to be willing to receive yourself more than ever. So I was avoiding the intensity that I am. And I don't know if this is making sense. It's like back to front. I was thinking I was avoiding energy that I was aware of, but it was me. Is this making sense?
It makes a lot of sense to me, and yeah, that's something that I've been looking at as well, because I'm like, you know, there's like possibilities that I'm aware of that are like so close and able to be stepped into, but everything that I was choosing wasn't creating it. And then, you know, I got that awareness of like, this is nothing outside of me. This is something that I am, that I have to choose and embrace and be.
Yeah. 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 So it's not being willing to receive the intensity of ourselves.
I'm sure that applies to no one else that's watching or listening to this.
Yeah.
So,
and one of the things that he said is, if you step into that level of intensity, you become so you can choose beyond what anybody can choose to be and create, and nothing can get in your way. And I mean, like, you don't make anything real in this reality. You become such an intensity. You know how Gary talks about you have to be willing to be willing to become the killing energy in order to destroy this reality.
Yeah.
Well, that intensity is that. If we don't become that intensity, we have to be at the effect.
And that speaks so much to the energy of as well, what it's like when you are functioning from that place of not being defined and like that undefinable energy, and then also, you know, the difference of that, or like when you turn yourself down, often that's the place where you're like, you've bought some definition of you, or you know, made someone else's reference point of you valid or real in some way. But it's like, that.
And I know that I definitely identified with, you know, we've all been implanted and explanted with, if you become that potent and powerful, that intense, you will create destruction. You'll destroy the world.
Yeah.
And it's the longness is your strongness thing, you know, it comes down to that level of intensity is what we are.
Yeah. And the funny thing too is, like, I've noticed as well that the more that you're willing to actually choose to be that intensity and not avoid it, like, it's almost like the less it seems like an intense energy, and it becomes this different like space that's actually available. And it might be more intense for other people, but it's like, I've noticed the more that I've used these XMen tools and facilitated these classes, it's like there's actually an ease with that undefined space and like intensity of being that people are really drawn to. And it's like, you know, because I think they're like, oh, I know I am that, and I would like to be that again.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Like to be that again, like they're not.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's just basically like, you know, how
Pretense that you fit in.
hiding it from ourselves.
The pretense by fitting in, by
Yeah.
pretending to fit in.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
So let me see. There might be some questions as well. There's hi guys. It's awesome to have you here.
Hello.
No questions so far. So yeah, what would you say, like in terms of, you know, like if you looked at the way that you used to, I guess, create your life, and now the sort of the the energy, the space, the consciousness that's available, like what are some of the things that you would say you've used to undefine your reality and, you know, like,
It's where I find the most peace. So it's when I become the space that just receiving with no point of view. It's something that I'll be honest, I come in and out of. So I can be that space of undefined, no point of view, total receiving. Until people get really uncomfortable, and then I'll find myself, people will stay away often. And I'll find myself going, and this is a thing that's been going on for me for a long time. And then I'll be like, okay, I have to be something different. So it's finding that space of not fitting in, but you know what I spoke about in the beginning, becoming what a contribution that they can receive, and still being just energy, space, and consciousness. And when I say just energy, space, and consciousness, I mean no solidity definitions.
yeah,
You know, where is that not relating? So forever I've bought, well, I have to relate. They have to perceive me relating to them in order for them to have that connection. But yeah, going beyond that is something that I've made a demand to go get beyond and stay beyond. At the moment, I come in and out and in and out. But I know I will. That's one thing that I know for sure, that I'll get beyond and stay beyond.
that's
Yeah.
very cool. And I'd say that's a great example of like one of those places where, you know, you were speaking about how you have actually way more choice available to you when you are that, you know, that potency and
Yeah.
that intensity. And I'd say that's one of a great example of that, where you have also that place with you where you're like, no matter what it takes, I'm gonna choose
Yeah.
this and I'm gonna be it, and whatever it takes, even if it takes, you know, 100 years, I'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I step more and more into it all the time. I mean, last week, 3 days, I just beat. And I was like, what was in my awareness was, what the question was, I would not know how to be with people being in this space. I don't know if people would be comfortable around this. And so I'm still learning. I'm still asking questions and getting more aware. It's been willing to be so different that you. I actually read a quote this morning and I typed it here and I was like, okay, that. What was it Gary said? Questions for 70. Where is it? Questions. Here we go. So he said, you have to be willing to be so different that you don't have to be received.
Wow.
You have to be willing to be so different that you don't have to be willing to be received. And at the same time, you still want to be a contribution. You get, it's a, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I get as well. It's like, you know, Gary like has that space available, but it's also like, you know, so many, I would say as well, that so many people desire to contribute and receive, like, you know, with whatever Gary is creating and choosing. And so it's probably also one of those things where, you know, when you have no point of view of it, it's like it can show up or not at will and ease. But you know, it's a
That's
very
where I've always created from, is that you know, when I was asking for everything, that from a young teenager asking for more, it was just like annoying. It was just like, okay, I'd like this, but then I would let it go. I would ask for it and I would let it go. And when I was with my ex-partner, my ex-husband, and I was creating with him, he would never get it, and I could never talk about it. But it was all energetic. It was all energetic. And it was just the energy that I beat and the ask. But he never recognized that. He never understood the contribution that I was to the businesses we had and the income. You know, he did all the institution and all the physical stuff, and he always complained that I didn't. I wasn't interested because I wasn't doing the physical thing,
right.
which was not true.
And that's so interesting as well, because you have so many, like, that's one of the most common questions that come up in XMen classes is like, okay, so I've got this energetic ability to, you know, create lots of different things, but I want to actualize different things in my life, you know, like, how do I do it? And you know, because we do, I think, as XMen, we know we have this capacity to ask and receive, and then there are certain things that we either think that we desire to create, or you know, we would like to desire to create, but we have some point of view in the way or something. But it's like it's a very different reality when you truly acknowledge, like you were saying, the contribution that you are and you can be when you ask and are willing to receive. Like, it can show up in so many different ways, and it's almost like the more the less point of view you have about how it can show up, the easier it can come into your life or to someone around you, or you know. And I mean,
Absolutely.
I love that as well. Like with Elder Guy, you look at it and it's like the way that Elder Guy has been created so far as well. It's just that constant, like, asking and receiving, and you know, being in the question. And
and there you go. It's like, I mean, I've created energetically magic, miracles, and mysteries to Ilaga. You know, it's not something that people ever see. It's not something that you know. It's like nobody sees it. So this is where we have been. This is where we've learned to not make it valuable. It's like, is this? Am I actually doing anything here? I didn't get it until Gary told me. I did not get that. You know, he said, "You're the one who created the money coming into the businesses and into the relationship. You know, into our marriage. You're the one who created the money." And as soon as we separated, he had no money.
right.
So,
and
but
I
I didn't get it.
Yeah. And I guess that's the piece about acknowledging, right? Like, sometimes when you acknowledge something about you, it's like no one else is going to see it or believe it, but it's like you have to know it's true for you, and then you can have it, no matter if anyone else can receive it or not. So I think we're well and truly frying people, because we don't have any questions. But someone did say, "Can you say more?" And I think that's about the quote that Gary said. Can you say it one more time, Moira?
You have to be willing to be so different that you don't have to be received.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like, I'm not going to talk more about it because it creates like such a great question in my world, and, you know, in the universe. I think it's like a great place to look at, like, just that.
He did that in the greatness class at the castle last year.
Amazing.
Yeah. So cool. Awesome.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, so we should let people know as well. Moira and myself have a class coming up called, I always forget the name.
When you don't fit.
When you don't fit. And yeah, it was very funny actually, because we were at the Antique Guild for a choice of possibilities with Simone, and on the graphic there's a big giraffe, and lo and behold, there was a huge giraffe at the Antique Guild. So I took a photo with it. But yeah, so you're invited. The link to it is in the comments, and yeah, we'd love to have you there because we're going to be exploring these, having these kinds of conversations and diving in really deep to what it is to be different and not fit and have ease with it and create your life in a different way. So,
and actually to get beyond the desire to even fit.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Moira. And
Thank you, Phil.
yeah, look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.